بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
So the topic that I was asked to speak about is the ethics of Muslims in society. Originally I wanted to talk about ethics of Muslim leaders, but then they said that's too specific. Just make it about ethics of Muslims in society. So I thought a lot about this because it's a very general topic. And the term that kept coming into my mind was actually the term that the Mu'tazila, the theological school of Mu'tazilites, they used to call themselves in the medieval period, they used to call themselves Ahl al-Adl wa Tawheed, the people of justice and Tawheed. And that there's two concepts really. I was thinking about how should Muslims live in this society, and these two concepts really kept jumping out in my mind: justice and Tawheed. Let's start with Tawheed, which is of course the center of the Muslim worldview. One of the main services that Muslims can render unto God and to other people in this society is to remind people of God and remind people of the afterlife. To remind people of God and to remind people of the afterlife. It's very rare to see people value the sacrifice in the dunya for a sacrifice in the akhirah in our society. And I mean, you can just think about examples of this when you talk about, let's say, a country's policies or a certain government policy. Right? It's always judged on whether or not it improves people's material lives. It's not judged on whether it improves their moral lives or improves their standing in the eyes of God, because that's just not, people don't even try and measure that. So, let's say, I was just discussing with someone who was reading, a book that was criticizing Muslims because they didn't develop capitalism, like European capitalism. Now, one of the sort of fundamental premises of European capitalism is that the preservation and increase of capital is the ultimate good, and there's nothing worth sacrificing for not maximizing growth. Right? So maximizing growth, preservation, and increase of capital is the ultimate good. And for Muslims, that was not worth it. There's lots of things that Muslims wouldn't sacrifice just to preserve and increase capital. They wouldn't do things that are haram. They wouldn't engage in certain practices of speculation and exploitation, and they wouldn't break relationships that they valued just for the sake of profit. So this is actually, in our society. I mean, think about, you see this constantly in the media that winning justifies anything, being rich justifies anything, and Muslims can be a reminder to people this is not the case. That believing in God and believing that what is with God is khayrun wa abqa, better and more lasting. That there's an afterlife in which all your sacrifices in this life will be repaid to you manyfold, like a goodly loan, qardan hasana, a goodly loan that you will be repaid many times in the afterlife. And obviously, it's not like everybody believes this, they just have to be reminded. We would, oftentimes be the only people who would speak out like this. So demonstrating the ability to sacrifice in the dunya is an active reminder of tadhkir, of people, to remind people of God and the afterlife in our society. And I have young kids, mashallah, and it's funny when I used to read about the Prophet ﷺ, his children like Al-Qasim and Ibrahim dying when they were 1, 2, 3 years old. I mean, I'm embarrassed to say this now, but I always used to think, well, he didn't, it's a young kid, he didn't really know them that well, so it probably wasn't that upsetting. Yeah, that was a really, really stupid thing to say. I mean, now, my kids are that age now, and when I imagine that loss, it's just, I mean, I don't know how to deal with it. And then you look at the way that he dealt with it, and then you see the beauty of faith. You see the beauty of faith. And my parents died, and one of the gifts that being Muslim gave to me was to, I miss my parents. I mean, I'm sad they're gone, but I never questioned why that happened. I mean, lots of other people are always saying, why? Why is this happening? How could this happen? Why would God take this person? Why would they die? If only they'd done this, if only they'd done that. This never came into my heart, alhamdulillah, and I feel real, I miss my parents, but I feel peace. And that's the gift of faith. That's the gift of faith. And the gift in trusting in the providence of God. I always, for some reason, whenever I think of this, the death of my parents, and I could probably think of words in the Quran, but there's this one Moroccan song, which is sort of old Moroccan song, which it says, وَهَكَذَا كُتِبَ فِي الْجَبِينِ سُبْحَانَ الْعَالِي, right? This is what was written on the person's forehead by God the Most High. Like, this is their destiny. And for some reason that song always comes into my mind, and it's just tremendous comfort, this idea that, that God wrote this person's end was going to be at this time. And, one of the odd features of living in a totally materialistic society is that even your family relationships, even your love for other people, is that it becomes totally involved in this world. So people's sense of loss when they lose their loved ones, their family, it's inconsolable, because it's like losing money, but losing something that's 1,000,000 times more valuable than money. But it's still an earthly loss. There's no answer for that loss. There's no cure for that loss, because there is no afterlife in that person's mind. There's no greater framework in which that loss takes place. Whereas in the Quran, I mean, now when I read these verses, it means so much more to me as a parent. وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّمَا أَمْوَالُكُمْ وَأَوْلَادُكُمْ فِتْنَةٌ وَأَنَّ اللَّهَ عِنْدَهُ أَجْرٌ عَظِيمٌ. Right? Know that your wealth and your children are a fitna. It's funny when people talk about fitna, I always think it's a bad thing. Yes, things can function in a bad way, but just because something's fitna doesn't mean that thing is bad. It just means one of its functions in the world is to test people. And our wealth and our children they're tests for us, not just because your kids drive you crazy sometimes, because losing them is a test. Losing wealth is a test. This is as immense and as overwhelming and as all world weighty as your attachment to your children feels. It feels like nothing can be stronger than that. That's just something given to you by God, and God can take that thing away. And that's just a test for you. That's not wrong. Nothing wrong happened. You weren't wronged by God. This is a test. And you can be grateful to God, or you can turn away from God. المال والبنون زينة الحياة الدنيا. Again, your wealth and your children are their beautification of this world. They don't mean everything in this world. Nothing means anything in this world except by God, through God. Then it gets meaning. It has meaning. And so this is things that we can remind people of. المال والبنون زينة الحياة الدنيا والباقيات الصالحات خير عند ربك. Right? Wealth and children are the decoration, the ornament of this earthly world, but the righteous good deeds, that last, they are better in the eyes of your Lord. They have more meaning in the eyes of your Lord. Finally, how can we remind people of Tawheed? We can remind people of Tawheed by showing them that religion and God are part of life. They're not separate from life. They're not a part of life. They are parts of all life. So religion isn't something you do one day a week. Religion isn't something you do in certain places and other places. It's something that you're doing all the time. You're always remembering God. You're always reminding other people of God. You're always doing Amr bil Ma'ruf wa Nahy anil Munkar. You're always praying. Wherever you are, you do your prayers. You're always fasting and letting people know about the beauties of fasting and of controlling your impulses. I forgot one last thing of Tawheed. And this for me is, and I was thinking about this, became very interesting for me. So God is one. We are many. Human beings are a polyglot multiplicity of colors, of languages, of customs. And there's, I don't want to just sit and kind of blame American society, but in many societies, there's a sense that the way we do things is the only real way to live. And everyone else kind of has, they're mixed up, they're confused, they're all on the path of becoming like little Americans. And eventually they'll realize this is the best way to live. But to actually think of human beings as purposefully designed to be pluralistic in their cultures, in their languages. Like there are many languages, there are many cultures, there are many values, there are many ways of dressing, there are many ways of treating each other, there are many ways of thinking about what's good and what's bad in any situation. That there are many different kinds of food. And to remind people, by the way, by being different in America, we remind people that difference, plurality, is a feature of human society, and that insisting on uniformity, insisting that all guys wear, hoodies and T-shirts with some stupid inane logo on it, and jeans that go down to their heels and flip-flops, or whatever guys wear. That's how they dress in my university. I don't know how other people dress in other universities, but people don't all dress the same. It's completely fine to dress totally different from other people. By doing that, you are reminding people of the beauty of difference. You're reminding that human beings are multiple and God is one. So just as God is one, we are diverse. So that's Tawheed. What about Adl, justice? We have these two beautiful verses in the Quran. أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا كُونُوا قَوَّامِينَ لِلَّهِ شُهَدَاءَ بِالْقِسْطِ ولا يجرمنكم شنآن قوم على ألا تعدلوا اعدلوا هو أقرب للتقوى. O you who believe, stand firm for God, stand strong for God, and be witnesses for justice, qist. And let not your hatred for any people make you not be just, make you not be fair. Be just, it is closer to taqwa. And then, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, kunu qawwamina bil qist, shuhada'a lillah. No, it's the opposite. This is a very interesting case. In the two verses, it's inverted. One is qawwamuna bil qist, shuhada'a lillah. One is qawwamuna lillah, shuhada'a bil qist. One case it's saying, stand firm for justice and be witnesses for God. Stand firm for God and be witnesses for justice. Because God is al-adl. God is justice. وَلَا عَلَى أَنفُسِكُمْ وَالْوَالِدَيْنِ وَالْأَقْرَبِينَ. Even if it means bearing witness against yourselves or your parents and your near of kin. So here, God commands us to stand for God as witnesses and stand for God, and as witnesses and stand for justice. Qist. Qist is comes originally from the Greek. Probably. We don't know. That's what some, like Asyuti and other Muslim scholars say this comes from, originally from Greek. You have the words like Christos, from the, like we get the notion of justice. Same root, originally going back to Greek. What is this? It's things balancing out, things weighing properly. So idl, the idl of a camel is half the load of a camel. In order for the camel to be able to walk, the two idls have to even out, have to be the same weight. So that's justice. It's things being in balance, everything being in its proper place, things being straight. This is what Muslims have to speak out for. We have to speak out for justice, even if it's against yourselves. And I think this clock was, I'm not sure if this was started at the right time or not, but I'm getting close to being done, so there might be extra time. But I was just reading yesterday that, remember this Malheur, I think it's called the Malheur Wildlife Sanctuary in Oregon, where these Bundy brothers, and they're kind of Sons of Liberty friends. I don't want to make fun of them. I actually, I appreciate their concern for the Constitution. So but it is kind of funny the way they talk. Anyway, so they went and they occupied this sanctuary against the federal government, and so this guy John Ritzheimer is one of the guys who was arrested, and he was convicted. He had a plea bargain. I think he did some small amount of time in prison. You may remember him because he was the guy who was doing these videos before in 2015 about how Islam was the evil religion, and he was saying we need to go and stand outside of mosques with guns and stuff like that. So I'm sorry, it's pretty kind of funny. So he and the other guys who got arrested, now they're on the TSA watch list. Sorry, it's really not funny. I mean, I don't like so they get really upset because they keep getting enhanced screening. They're not on the no-fly list. They're just having to get patted down extra. The guy gets really upset and he starts saying, "The Constitution." They got up the Constitution. He started waving at the TSA guy. So the TSA guy, does full body cavity or whatever, and so they're really upset. So they contacted CARE. I'm not joking. This actually happened. They contacted CARE. We want to team up with you against the TSA enhanced screening list, which I completely agree with. And if anyone's from CARE is in this relatively limited audience size, please accept their offer, because standing for justice means you stand for justice no matter who it is. So the Prophet ﷺ famously said, even if his daughter stole, she would be punished like all others. And there's another great story, it's in Sahih Bukhari, I'm pretty sure, that one of the Ansar has a dispute with a Jewish person, and over land. They both claim ownership to this land, and the Jewish person comes and he has bayina. Bayina means a direct proof. In this case, 2 witnesses. He has 2 witnesses. And the Muslim guy didn't have any witnesses, and so the Prophet ruled for the Jewish person. So this is the Jewish person's property. And the Muslim gets very angry. He says, "Oh, Messenger of God, you're ruling, I'm a Muslim, you're ruling for this Jewish person?" The Prophet said, "He has bayina." Doesn't matter who you are. Everybody's equal before the law. Everybody's equal before God's law. So Muslims have to stand for this. We have to affirm the rights of everybody if we affirm those rights for ourselves. We need to stand for justice, even if it means defending people we don't like. So, and by the way, if you don't believe me about that story I told you about John Ritzheimer, I didn't believe it. I read all the articles because I said, this can't be, this is just to be one of those fake news things. But actually, this is true. And I pray, I would be so happy. It would make my week to see this John Ritzheimer guy and the CARE attorney in court, saying, complaining about how it's unconstitutional to have people put on these watch lists without any explanation of how they got there, without any clear means of how to get off. So, I think, again, I need to adjust my lifestyle, because I keep saying Muslims should do this, that, and the other, but I don't look Muslim in any way. I don't pay any cost for this. My wife wears hijab, she works, and I'm so proud of her for all she's accomplished, and just going out every day, it's such an act of courage for her, and I'm so impressed by that. I feel like I don't actually do anything like this, but I try. Usually when I talk about Islam, the conversation just becomes occupied with why I'm Muslim, and they don't even get a chance to say the original thing I want to say. But we Muslims, we have to stand for Tawheed. We have to remind people of God. We have to remind people that there is something beyond this material world. There are things worth sacrificing for that are not material things. And as I talked about earlier, a lot of people think this makes you weak. Think about, I mentioned the Somali community in America. People saying, "Oh, the Somali community, they're not getting equity and ownership. They're going to be retarded as a community because they're not owning things like other communities." And in America, that's sort of inexcusable. Whatever is making you poor is inexcusable. Like that, you can't. That whatever religious idea you have, if it's preventing you from building capital, that's really not acceptable. But the willingness to sacrifice makes you strong. The willingness to sacrifice doesn't make you weak, it makes you strong. The early Muslims weren't strong because they were after worldly power. They were strong because they didn't care about worldly power. You become strong when you don't care about loss. You become strong when you don't care about pain in this world. You become strong when you're not a slave to the dirham wa dinar. As the Prophet says, "Bi'sal abd dirham wa dinar." The worst slave is a slave of the dinar and the dirham. When you're not afraid to lose, you are a very powerful people. And so reminding people of God, reminding them of the afterlife, trying to explain to them the notion of the afterlife. This is something that is going to strengthen people. It doesn't weaken them. And adl, tawheed al-adl. Balance, equality, equity, standing up for people even though you don't agree with them. These are the acts of people who care about justice. And if Muslims become known for this in this country, then they will truly be valued. We will truly be valued. Jazakallahu khair.